Hello, friends. Welcome to the Case for Life show. We're delighted to have you with us. What should you say if you're talking about abortion and somebody brings up rape or life of the mother or other hard case scenarios? How should you respond? We're going to tackle that on today's show. Delighted to have you with us. If you haven't already visited our websites, please do so. Well, what should you do if you're conversing with a friend or maybe a classmate? Or maybe you're having a discussion with a teacher, or maybe even a fellow Sunday school class member, and the person you're talking to brings up rape. And I got a little correspondence here that illustrates what I'm talking about. Here's an email I got not long ago. Dear Scott, I appreciate your pro-life work. I appreciate your heart for the Lord, and I appreciate the fact that you are biblically grounded in your Christianity. Thank you for all of that. Well, so far, so good, right? And then she says this, she says, I just have one concern. What about a young girl who's raped? If I thought about my niece, for example, being sexually assaulted and being forced to carry a pregnancy to term, I don't know that I could tell her that she's got to do that. It doesn't seem right. And I'm struggling with this because as a Christian, I know that all human beings are made in the image of God. And I don't want to defy my Christian convictions by saying abortion for rape is okay, but I still feel like it would be very difficult for anyone to tell my niece, you've got to have this baby, when it can remind you of what you went through and cause you untold psychological pain for the rest of your life. Help me out here. What do I say as a Christian? Okay, that is a great email from Ellie. Thank you, Ellie. Listen, here's the deal. When you have the issue of rape brought into a discussion on abortion, the very first thing for you to remember is actually quite easy. And that is, do what any normal human being should do when they're confronted with a situation where an innocent woman has been assaulted sexually. Show empathy. Too often what happens is pro-lifers go immediately to statistics. Hey, well, 98% of all sexual assaults do not result in pregnancy. Only a very small percentage do. That's kind of a bad answer when someone just told you of a woman that's been sexually assaulted. Instead, here's what I would do. I would show empathy. Then the next step you want to do is simply say something like this. You're right. That woman that's been sexually assaulted has suffered a terrible injustice. We agree on that, and I hope that her assailant is punished to the fullest extent of the law, and I hope that pro-life Christians come alongside that woman and assist her. Show empathy. Then the next thing you want to do is decide, am I talking to an inquirer or am I talking to a crusader? And it's vitally important you make that distinction and get it right. Here's the difference. The email I just read is very much a case of there being a inquirer like her who understands the moral logic of the pro-life view. Remember what she said. She says here that she appreciates the fact that I'm a biblically grounded Christian, and she wants to be as well. So she's not coming to this issue with an attitude. She's not bringing up rape to try to trick me. She's not bringing up rape to try to change the subject on the abortion debate. She is a genuinely concerned Christian woman, I'm assuming young, who wants to understand this issue and be biblical in her approach. That is what we call an inquirer, not somebody who is just bringing up the issue to distract. Now, the other person that brings up rape is not so intellectually honest. This person is what we call a crusader. They don't bring up rape because they're struggling with the issue psychologically. They bring up rape because they want to try to make you look like an extremist. How dare you? You wouldn't even force a woman who's been raped. You would force her to carry this baby to term, and you don't care about her well-being at all. You just want to force your view on her and make her suffer for being assaulted. How dare you call yourself a pro-life compassionate Christian? Okay, that person is bringing up rape to create a wedge issue that they can use to try to derail your pro-life case. And that person you're going to treat very differently than you do the inquirer. So how should we treat the inquirer? here's what you do. Like I said a moment ago, when the issue of rape is brought up by an inquirer, you're going to be very careful to show empathy first. And I would say something like this. I would say something like, Ellie, look, I agree with you completely. You're right. That woman who has been sexually assaulted has suffered a terrible injustice. And you know what else I agree with you on? It's quite possible, perhaps even probable, that that child will remind her of what she went through for the rest of her life. You could be right about that in terms of the child being a painful reminder to the mother. You and I agree on that. So then the question becomes this: how should a civil society treat innocent human beings who remind us of a painful event? And let the question just be there a little bit. Now, what this question helps do is help distinguish psychological complexity from objective moral complexity. Here's psychological complexity. Pro-lifers hear of a 13-year-old girl that's pregnant, and, she and her boyfriend messed up, and they're pregnant, and we feel sympathy for her. And we think, boy, I sure wouldn't want to be 13 and pregnant and face the terror of telling my parents, my youth group kicking me out, my Christian school kicking me out, and the fact that I may not have a very good young adult season of life because I'll be busy raising a kid. We understandably feel sympathy for this girl. But it doesn't follow that because we feel sympathy for her, meaning psychological connection with her on this, it doesn't follow that there's no objectively right decision to make about her child. And what a lot of people do is they confuse psychological complexity, meaning they feel conflicted in their emotions about this girl. On one hand, they understand what she's going through. On the other hand, they think, well, we shouldn't, end a pregnancy for frivolous reasons, but this doesn't seem frivolous. This girl is indeed going to face incredible challenges. And so people think that because they feel sympathy for the girl, that there's no right answers on what to do about her child. And that's simply not true. Psychological complexity does not equal objective moral complexity. So let's unpack this a little further. In this case, by asking the question, how should a civil society treat innocent human beings who remind us of a painful event, we're getting to the core issue that is really the one that matters most, and that is, what is the unborn? If the unborn are not human, it doesn't matter why you want to abort the pregnancy. Who cares, right? I mean, maybe the woman just wants an abortion. I would say that's reason enough. If her child is not human, no additional explanation for justifying the abortion is needed. All we need to do is say, have the abortion. You want it? Choose it like your favorite flavor of ice cream. You like vanilla, I like chocolate. I don't judge you because it's morally neutral. It does not matter. But if a human being is involved, if her child is human, now we got to ask the question that follows. Is it okay to intentionally kill innocent human beings who remind us of something painful? Suppose the mother has a 2-year-old that reminds her of a past painful event, let's say an additional, sadly, sexual assault. Would we think it would be okay for her to kill the 2-year-old for what was done to her? And of course, the answer everybody's going to say is no. And then, of course, the critics who are just trying to grandstand on the issue will come back and say, see, they're not the same. The child that is already born is alive. The one in the womb isn't. Okay, that's the issue then we need to start with. What is the unborn? Are the unborn human? If they are, then the same reasons would be needed to justify killing the unborn as would be needed to justify killing a 2-year-old, a 13-year-old, or a 40-year-old. In other words, we're going to have to come up with a morally sufficient reason for intentionally killing an innocent human being. And so the question becomes, is it okay to intentionally kill innocent human beings who remind us of something painful or difficult? And I think anybody with a functioning moral compass would say, no, of course not. So the real issue here is not really rape. The real issue here is, what is the unborn? Are the unborn human beings? Now, another thing to point out here before we go any further into this, a lot of times when we deal with now the crusader, let's switch from the inquirer who's intellectually honest and just trying to make sense of her newfound pro-life convictions, and deal with a crusader, a guy who's just trying to make you look bad. He wants to make it look like you hate women, want them to suffer, and that's really what pro-lifers are all about anyway, so let's make you look bad by bringing up rape. The truth is, his position that he's putting forward is a red herring, meaning he's disguising what he really believes by hiding behind rape victims. So here's what his real position is. His real position is that a woman can have an abortion for any reason she wants. It's a fundamental right that she has. Okay, if it is a fundamental right, then he should argue for that rather than arguing by hiding behind rape victims and just trying to make you look bad. So with a crusader, what I'll do is I will look at him and say, okay, I'm going to grant your premise. I'm going to grant that abortion in cases of rape is totally justifiable. It's not my position, but let's grant it for the sake of discussion. Will you join me now in opposing all other abortions that have nothing to do with rape? Listen up, men and women. 100% of the time, and I do mean 100% of the time, he will say, no, I won't join you. Women have a fundamental right to an abortion, and I'm going to fight for that. Okay, then why don't you fight for that by being honest about what you truly believe? You believe abortion should be legal for any reason or no reason, and that there should be no restrictions on it at any point in the pregnancy. All right, be honest. If that's your position, argue for it. But don't hide behind rape victims by trying to make yourself look like you're only arguing for abortion in one case when you think it should be legal in every case. So call his bluff and simply ask, okay, I'll grant for the sake of argument we allow abortion in cases of rape. Will you join me in opposing all other abortions? Trust me, 100% of the time the answer will be no. By the way, this is exactly what happens when people bring up accusations about pro-lifers not caring about other forms of human life. Oh, you're pro-life? What are you doing about refugees? What are you doing about the poor? What are you doing about immigrants? What are you doing about equal pay and fairness in the workplace for women? You don't care about life. You're not pro-life. You're just pro-birth. Okay, set aside for the moment how ridiculous it is to say to a pro-lifer, hey, because you oppose the intentional killing of an innocent human being in the womb, you got to fix everything wrong with society. Let's set that aside for a moment and just call the bluff. So I would look at the guy who says that to me and say, okay, if I do everything you demand pro-lifers do, I take care of the poor, I take care of immigrants, I devote resources to helping refugees, I make sure that women get equal pay in the workforce, I do everything you demand of me, will you now become pro-life and agree to help protect the unborn? Once again, 100% of the time, the answer will be no. It will never be anything but no, because people are using these objections to avoid talking about the real question. And the real question is this: under what conditions is it ever okay to intentionally kill an innocent human being? That's what they need to argue. Remember our pro-life syllogism. Premise 1, it's wrong to intentionally kill innocent human beings. Premise 2, abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, conclusion, abortion is wrong. It's wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Abortion does that, therefore it's wrong. Now that's our formal argument. But instead of engaging that argument, people try to change the subject by attacking you for being allegedly uncaring, or attack you for not being pro-life in the way you need to be according to their definition of what pro-life should be. In either case, just call their bluff. Look at them and say, if I do everything you demand, will you then join me in being pro-life? And 100% of the time they will say no. Well, then why did you bring up these objections? If they're not your true position, why are you bringing them up? It's a gigantic exercise of trying to hide what they truly believe and change the subject on you. You don't want to let them get away with it. Now, another thing about this rape objection, it assumes the unborn are not human. When somebody says, hey, we should allow abortion in cases of rape, they are assuming the unborn aren't human. Well, how do we know that? Well, let me ask you this. Again, let's go back to what I mentioned a moment ago. We got a 2-year-old in front of us. His parents view him as a hardship. That 2-year-old reminds the mother in particular of a previous boyfriend that sexually assaulted her, and she got pregnant. And every time she looks at her 2-year-old, she remembers what happened to her on that dark night. And she wants the right to kill her child, to kill the memories she's having. Would anybody say she can do that? Everyone with a functioning moral compass, of course, will say, no, you can't do that. Well, why not? Well, because he's a human being. If the unborn are human, should they be killed in the name of relieving us of painful memories any more than we'd kill a toddler for that reason? We've got to start with the question, what is the unborn? And then go from there to ask, is this a good justification for intentionally killing an innocent human being? Because if the unborn are human, they should not be intentionally killed as innocent human beings any more than you'd kill a toddler, teenager, or 70-year-old for that reason. So we want to start with the main thing. What is the unborn? Now, we're going to take a break here in just a minute. When we come back, I'm going to do two things. I'm going to finish up talking about how you respond to this rape issue by giving you a question to ask people that will really help you get a sense of where they're coming from and set you up to give a really powerful answer on this so you're not on the defensive. Then also, I want to take a few minutes to talk about the hard case of life of the mother, because some people will bring this up too in an attempt to derail your pro-life position. You don't need to let them do that. There's a way to discuss this that is both humane and logically sound. I look forward to seeing you when we come back from the break. Hello, friends. You may not know it, but I'm part of a dynamic organization that has been training pro-lifers to make a case for life in the public square for 3 decades now, and that organization is Life Training Institute. We have sent speakers over the years into schools, Catholic and Protestant schools. We've done training seminars to prepare pro-lifers to make a case for life. We'd like to equip you. Visit us at prolifetraining.com. Welcome back, everybody. We've been talking about the difficult question of rape and how it relates to abortion. And just to review, we've talked about the fact that psychological complexity, meaning us feeling sympathy for someone, does not entail there are no right answers as to what should be done with the child. We also talked about the fact that this rape issue is often brought up as a red herring by a crusader who really isn't interested in what your argument is. He just wants to use the rape issue to make you look bad. And we told you about how to call his bluff by simply saying, look, if I agree that abortion should be legal in cases of rape, will you join me in opposing all other abortions? And 100% of the time, he's going to say no. So don't be afraid to call the bluff. We also talked about the fact that the argument assumes the unborn are not human. Would we kill a 2-year-old whose father was a rapist? Obviously not. So the argument assumes the unborn are not human. Here's a way you can ask a very simple question to get a clear sense of what the person you're talking to believes. When they bring up rape, very nicely, don't be a jerk about this, just be nice. Say to the person, in the case of pregnancy that results in, or the case of rape that results in pregnancy, how many humans are involved? 2 or 3? And often the person will look at someone and say, 2, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3. Most often they say 3, surprisingly. And so then I will say to them, okay, let's talk about how we ought to treat each of the 3 humans involved in this pregnancy that results from rape. What about the rapist, the guilty rapist? Should we execute him for the crime of rape? Almost everyone says no. They don't want to execute the rapist. Sometimes that's because the person you're talking to may oppose the death penalty generally, so they don't want it for murderers or rapist. Or you could be talking to someone who thinks rape does not rise to the level of a capital offense. Okay, it doesn't matter at this point. Here's the key thing. They admit that the guilty rapist, or they say to you, he should not be killed. Okay, fair enough for now. Then ask this question. What about the mother? Should we execute her for the rape? And this is where people rightly will become very troubled. And they'll say things like, you got to be kidding me. Execute the innocent mother for what the rapist did for her? Why, that's what those Islamic countries do. They call them honor killings. They kill women who've been sexually assaulted rather than the rapist men who did it. And I agree, that's barbaric, and you can say that. Then you ask this question. Here's the third question. What about the third person involved here? The child. Should we kill the child? Should we execute the child for the sin of his father? And here's where people will start to get a little bit unsure of themselves. They might say, well, I feel like I'm being cornered. Well, actually, you're not cornering them. The argument is cornering them. And you've now brought them to the point you want them to be at. And that's this question. Is it ever okay to intentionally kill an innocent human being so that we can feel better about a situation? Of course, the answer is always no. So by asking that question, how many humans are involved, 2 or 3, you can help bring the person to the real issue, which is what is the unborn. And once you've established the status of the unborn, meaning that they are distinct, living, and whole human beings from the beginning, you now have a platform from which to help them understand that intentionally killing an innocent human being is never okay, regardless of the psychological relief it might bring to us. Okay, so that's how I would deal with rape. Remember the key distinction between the inquirer who is just trying to make sense of her new pro-life beliefs and the crusader that just wants to make you look bad. But that raises now another question. How do we respond to people who bring up medical necessities? They'll say things like, well, what about ending a pregnancy or having an abortion to save the life of the mother? And this is where pro-lifers, it's important for us to acknowledge that there are cases where the pregnancy does directly threaten the mother's life. Now, notice my choice of words here, life, not health. Why is that? Because the word health has been defined so widely and so broadly and so liberally that you can drive a Mack truck through that definition of health. By health, what a lot of people mean today is psychological health, emotional health, economic health, family health, social health. It's not the physical well-being of the mother only. It's all those other things. What the World Health Organization defines as an overall sense of well-being. Well, by that definition, any abortion could be justified. But what about cases that directly threaten not the health of the mother, but the actual life of the mother? A case, for example, like ectopic pregnancy. This is where the embryo implants on the inner wall of the fallopian tube, and in many cases, the doctor will do all he can to treat both the mother and the child as a patient, but many times you can't do that. As the embryo grows in that narrow fallopian tube, where it has implanted itself, the risk to the mother is evident. That tube could break and she hemorrhages to death as the child grows and causes the tube to burst. Now, you're a pro-life doctor. What do you do in a situation where you can either do nothing and lose 2 human beings, the mother and the child? We can't save either if we do nothing. Both will die. Is that the right thing to do? Or should we act in such a way that we save one life, even though the unintended but foreseen result of saving that one life is the death of the embryo? And I would argue we should act to save the one life we can, that being the mother. Now, somebody says right away, well, that you just justified abortion. No, we didn't. Let's go back to our syllogism. It is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Abortion does that, therefore it's wrong. The physician in this case is not intentionally killing an innocent human being. He foresees the death of the unborn, much the same way a general in a just war can foresee civilians dying, though he doesn't intend their deaths, but he can foresee it in the act of prosecuting a just war. In the same way, here we have a situation where a physician's intent is to save the life of the mother, and he has a morally sufficient reason to move forward, and that is that if he doesn't act to save the life of the mother, he will lose 2 human beings, the mother and the embryo. Now, at this stage, we do not have the ability to transplant that embryo to a surrogate where it could be born healthy or alive. We don't have that ability. We only have the option of saving the mother or ending the pregnancy. And in ending the pregnancy, yes, the embryo dies. But I could also argue that in removing the embryo from its pathological environment, meaning the fallopian tube rather than the womb where it belongs, I have not made the embryo worse off. He will die in the tube if we do nothing, in the fallopian tube. He will die if I remove him. The fact I don't have a rescue plan for him does not mean I acted wrongly in saving the one life I could, in this case, the mother. So women who have had surgeries to remove ectopic pregnancies have not had abortions. And another point I want to make, there's a lot of lies and misinformation going on out there saying that in red states that have banned abortion, women can't get life-saving care for ectopic pregnancies, that they're going to be forced to die. That is a bunch of bunk. There's not one state that has it written in their state laws on abortion that women cannot get life-saving treatment in cases like ectopic pregnancy. It's simply a lie that women will be left to die because we have pro-life laws. So don't fall for any of that. And in a future episode, I'm actually going to play a clip from a congressional hearing where this issue came out. The witness was grilled on, name for me one state that says women must die rather than get life-saving ectopic pregnancy surgery. And of course, the witness had no answer for any of that because there are no states that say a woman must die rather than get life-saving treatment. Again, if you really want to dig deeper on these types of issues and learn how to bring the issue down to the question, what is the unborn? I invite you to take a look at our Basic Case for Life course, which you can get on our website, and take a deeper dive into what it means to defend your pro-life views persuasively in the face of a culture that is often skeptical and not very friendly to what you believe. You can do that by taking the course, and I hope you will. When we get together in the next episode, I want to talk about what these state laws look like and how we might approach them with a good dose of truth to confront the lies that are in the culture. Thank you for joining us today. We're here to help you defend your pro-life views persuasively, and I hope you found this show helpful in doing just that.